Respect. One of the simplest ways of showing it is by simply returning a person's phone call. At the Glen Armentor Law Corporation, we not only return every call, we also take whatever time is necessary to make sure you completely understand your personal injury case and what it will take to win it. Respect. Deserve. The Glen Armentor Law Corporation, where a fair settlement is no act.
Good evening and welcome to Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at national, state, and local news through a progressive perspective. I am your host, Stephen Handwork, and I greatly thank you for joining us here tonight on the show. Tonight we've got a jam-packed show, like we said, so why don't you sit down, get out your notebook, because you might want to take some notes. But first off, as always, this week in the news. Bush vetoes the troops. Yep, that's right. The Congress sat down, put together a bill to approve his emergency supplemental funding for the troops, and guess what? George W. Bush vetoed it, and only his second veto since being in office for now the past 6 years. This is the only time he's taken it, only the second time rather that he's taken out his veto stamp. This way, he says that, you know what? I know better than the 80% of Americans who say that we need to be drawing down our troops and forcing the Iraqis to stand up. I know better. No, we're going to keep our troops over there forever, and I'm going to let another president worry about that because I'm not very worried about it. Yep, that's basically what he said. Well, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, and Harry Reid, Leader in the Senate, they had something to say about that. Here's a clip. Take a look.
A bipartisan majority of Congress sent the President a bill to fully fund our troops and change the mission in Iraq. The President refused to sign this bill. That's his right, but now he has an obligation to explain his plan to responsibly end this war. In the coming days, we'll continue to reach out to the President, and we hope congressional Republicans will remain silent. Congressional Republicans through this whole debate will work with us as well. But if the President thinks by vetoing this bill he'll stop us from working to change the direction of the war in Iraq, he is mistaken.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Earlier today, the Leader and I sent to the President a bill that made a strong commitment to support our men and women in uniform and a strong commitment to honor our promises to our veterans. This is a bill that was worthy of the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform. It was a bill that honored and respected the wishes of the American people to have benchmarks, to have guidelines, to have standards for what is happening in Iraq. Again, out of respect for the wishes of the American people. We had hoped that the President would have treated it with the respect that bipartisan legislation supported overwhelmingly by the American people deserved. Instead, the President vetoed the bill outright and, frankly, misrepresented what this legislation does. This bill supports the troops. In fact, it gives the President more than he asked for our troops. And well, they deserve it. They have done their duties excellently. They have done everything that has been asked of them. All of this without, in some cases, the training, the equipment, and a plan for success for them. The President wants a blank check. The Congress is not going to give it to him. The President said in his comments that he did not believe in timelines, and he spoke out very forcefully against them. Yet, in 1999, on June 5th, then Governor Bush said about President Clinton, I think it's important for the President to lay out a timetable as to how long they will be involved and when they would be withdrawn. Despite his past statements, President Bush refuses to apply the same standards to his own activities. Standards, that's the issue. If the President thinks that what is happening on the ground in Iraq now is progress, as he said in his comments tonight, then it's clear to see why we have a disagreement on policy with him.
Thank God we've got Pelosi and Reid standing up for us. But I'm telling you what, we've got to do something about this. This past week, John Edwards said, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to actually place an ad out there. I'm going to place the ad touting why I should be the next president and why I'm better than the other Democrats in the race, like some of the other presidential candidates. No, he didn't do that. Instead, this is the ad he put together. Take a look.
President Bush isn't listening to us.
It's time to end the war.
Congress passed a plan to end it.
And bring our troops home.
But the president vetoed it.
We want Congress to know
we are with you.
Don't back down to President Bush.
Send him the same bill again and again.
We, the people, will stand with you.
Because stopping a president who believes he can do no wrong
takes people with courage to do what's right.
I'm John Edwards, and I approve this message.
Great job. I definitely add my voice to that. It's time to bring our troops home. Bobby Jindal, the next governor wannabe, gets a good old spanking twice in as many weeks. That's right. Barney Frank, one of my heroes in the U.S. House of Representatives, takes Jindal to school on the floor of the House, only to show that poor Bobby Jindal wasn't prepared for school that day and didn't do his homework the night before. Here's a clip. It speaks for itself. Take a look. And, well, this could be our next governor if we don't do something about it. Take a look.
This motion to recommit. Building upon the base bill, this motion to recommit gives priority in the awarding of housing units under the bill to individuals who are either employed or residents of households with people who are employed, exceed the number of legally required hours of community service that housing public residents may perform. Third, are individuals who are elderly or disabled. Fourth, who qualify for placement in housing to avoid having their families separated under existing federal family unification housing rules.
I thank the gentleman. Let me ask the gentleman from Louisiana. We've been reading it over, and I do regret the fact that we got this a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to check with Valerie Plame. I don't think there was anything secret in here, but I don't know why it had to be withheld, so we couldn't have a sensible analysis. But maybe there's one possibility. Could the gentleman tell me what in here changes existing law? I'll yield to him.
If the chairman will yield, we're directing the housing authority. They have to do these things. They have to.
Does this change existing law? Does the housing authority now have, the housing authority, by the way, people should understand, the housing authority that we are directing here is otherwise known as HUD, because HUD controls this housing authority and has for some time since before the hurricane. But does this change existing law affecting housing authorities?
If the chairman will yield. Mr. Chairman, this changes current law by directing, not giving the discretion, by directing the housing authority to keep these certain criminals
out. In what areas does it direct them? My understanding is that, for instance, the work requirement they've already got, housing authorities, that the restrictions on people with criminal backgrounds are already there. In what way does this recommit, which I'm sure the gentleman has seriously studied and is very familiar with it, he wouldn't legislate unseriously, could he tell me what in this changes existing law? And I'll yield to the gentleman from Louisiana.
Mr. Chairman, under current law, they've got the discretion. They're not required. We are requiring the housing authority to do this.
Well, I would ask the gentleman, no, I'm yielding to the gentleman from Louisiana. The question is, in what area do they not, for instance, on the work requirement, they don't have discretion. What areas, check with whoever you have to check with. And what areas are you changing it from discretionary to mandatory? I'll yield again.
The underlying bill prevents the preferences that we've listed in this motion to recommit. This would direct the housing authority to give preference to those that meet the requirements, either being...
Well, it's, the point that we're directing the housing authority to give preference to people who follow existing law, Mr. Speaker, I wish we'd had this before. We might have been able to understand it better. It appears to me to be simply a restatement of existing law. And apparently members on the other side are afraid that HUD, which is the housing authority, won't follow existing law. And I do have my own doubts about this administration's predilection for following existing law.
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I tried 5 times. I give up. I'm just going to comment that some of my friends on the other side appear more concerned about enforcing the rules strictly than at other times. I asked several times to get an answer. I don't think the answer is over there. I don't think this was very well considered. It does not appear to me to change existing law, and to say that we're going to tell them that they have to follow existing law, it seems rather odd. If it is so important, you know, if this has been offered as an amendment, We offered that we argued successfully all the substantive amendments would be in order. To the extent that it changed anything, it is interesting, it changed it only for New Orleans. So this is only for people whose houses were washed away. If you were apparently, and now I don't know how it makes any change. I will take on faith the gentleman's assertion that it makes changes, even though he couldn't tell me what they were. But I would then say, why would we say only if your house had been washed away would you be subject to some restriction? And let me now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Melanson. The gentleman is probably trying to figure out what the amendment says, and that's a hard job. I will then repeat what he had said to me, which is, apparently this is, and read this I do know, it's New Orleans only. Now, we could not amend it for the whole area. What about Mississippi? I mean, was the gentleman afraid that if he included Mississippi, the gentleman, Mr. Taylor, would challenge him to come to Mississippi? I think the gentleman from Louisiana has already been to Mississippi. He wouldn't have to change his travel plans the way the gentleman from Georgia would have. Why should only people who have suffered this enormous trauma, who live in New Orleans, be subjected to a special set of rules? By the way, we will send to members long lists of rules already on the books, statutory and regulatory, that prevent public housing authorities from allowing people with criminal records to come in. You have the one-strike situation where they can be easily evicted. So this does not add, as nearly as we can tell, to the restriction on letting people in. To the extent that it imposes a greater work requirement, we are talking about people whose homes were destroyed, whose jobs may have been washed away, who may be trying to find additional housing. Mr. Speaker,
time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, because so has my patience.
Outstanding work, Chairman Frank. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to you coming down here to Louisiana to see us. We definitely look forward to that. More news on that in the upcoming weeks. In his second spanking in as many weeks, Bobby kicks up dust with Governor Blanco, claiming our Road Home program doesn't have enough money to cover what we've been telling people. Well, in the public response, here is what the governor had to say. Louisiana cannot afford to have our own congressional delegation voting against us. The most recent case in point is your vote last month to deny Louisiana additional $6.9 billion in urgent federal recovery relief. Your vote further delays the money Louisiana needs to strengthen our levees, provide affordable housing, help our fishermen, rebuild our schools, and give local governments the ability to seek forgiveness for their community disaster loans. Congressman Jindal, Governor wannabe, are you kidding me? You are going to try and go out there and chastise the governor for not having enough money in our Road Home program, one of which that you said that you were supporting. This is a program that is vital to us here in this state. But no, you don't want to take time for that. Instead, you want to try and get partisan points. However, guess what, Congressman? We actually do look at your voting record. And when you vote against the interests of Louisiana, how can you ask in the same breath for us to support you in your bid to be our next governor? You have got to be crazy. You have got to be crazy. Unbelievable. I am very glad that we have people standing up for us, like the governor and like Congressman Barney Frank. Jindal spokesman Trey Williams has since responded to Blanco's statement, and he stated, "It is disappointing that the Governor Blanco has chosen to respond to Congressman Jindal's legitimate inquiry with unprofessional finger-pointing. Governor Blanco's letter admits she knew of the shortfall before, but still leaves some fundamental questions unanswered. When will the Road Home program run out of money, and how much longer did Governor Blanco intend to cover up this fact?" Again, Congressman Jindal, you must be kidding us, honestly. Not only, first off, you say that her unprofessional finger pointing. It's unprofessional for her to actually say, Congressman, we would have had $6.9 billion in this account. It would have been in this account if it were not for your vote. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Then we go on in the program, and they say that when is the program going to run out of money, and how much longer did Governor Blanco intend to cover this up? It must be the case that Congressman Jindal either hasn't figured out how to use the internet, or maybe his handlers haven't spent time with him on how to use a mouse, because it's pretty easy that if you crack open a newspaper or visit any of the news sources in Louisiana within the past 6 months, you would have known that the Road Home program was having problems, Congressman. Unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. Somebody needs to stand up to this guy, and I'm glad that that our Governor Blanco is doing that, and she's not laying down to be trampled over by this man. Unbelievable. We've got to do something and stand up. That's for sure. Government oversight. Finally, someone is looking into the bilking that Halliburton has been doing to our national treasury and its subsidiaries, by the way. But I wonder why they've been able to get away with it for so long. Take a look.
Thompson, you said that I think it was the fire department pension.
Fire and police department pension funds.
Police and fire own some 400,000 shares in Halliburton company.
Yes. At that point.
Are you aware of the fact that the Vice President of the United States had more than that on option, over 400,000 shares on option?
I was not, Senator.
Yeah, he was. Do you know what the final exercise date is on those options?
I don't.
I do. It's 2009, after its full service to the United States government, all the way through there. Mr. Thompson, given your work and research, do you think that companies will stop doing business with terrorist nations on their own, or is legislation needed?
Unfortunately, it has become clear over a period of years that while things may be legal, it doesn't mean that they are ethical. And I believe that unless you close the loophole, companies will continue to attempt to do business in backdoor fashions.
Yes. I wonder why they've been able to get away with this for so long. Probably because Dick Cheney's stock options don't expire until 2009 when he's out of office. Unbelievable to me. And guess what? I bet you he's going to be exercising those options literally 5 minutes after our next president gets sworn in. I betcha. In more government oversight, Dick Durbin, a senator from Illinois, takes to the floor of the Senate to go off on pre-war intelligence. Take a listen.
A few hundred feet away from here, in a closed room, carefully guarded, the Intelligence Committee was meeting on a daily basis for top-secret briefings about the information we were receiving, and the information we had in the Intelligence Committee was not the same information being given to the American people. I couldn't believe it. Members of this administration were in active, heated debate over whether aluminum tubes really meant that the Iraqis were developing nuclear weapons. Some within the administration saying, of course not. It's not the same kind of aluminum tube. At the same time that members of the administration were telling the American people to be fearful of mushroom-shaped clouds. I was angry about it. Frankly, I couldn't do much about it. Because you see, in the Intelligence Committee, we're sworn to secrecy. We can't walk outside the door and say, the statement made yesterday by the White House is in direct contradiction to classified information that's being given to this Congress. We can't do that. We couldn't make those statements. And so in my frustration, I sat here on the floor of the Senate and listened to this heated debate about invading Iraq, thinking the American people are being misled. They are not being told the truth. And that's why I joined 22 of my colleagues in voting no.
Way to go, Senator Durbin. We are exactly as enraged about this as you are, except you know the facts. You know what happened in those private meetings, in those top intelligence meetings that nobody else was allowed into. But it seems interesting to me that this Republican administration would go in, tell you the truth, tell you what they knew, and then turn around, leave that meeting, and at the same time then start lying to the country and forced you guys to remain quiet on it. There was nothing you guys could do. At least we can thank you now for your vote. I just think that we need to change the system that would allow an administration to literally run away with the country like it had. And finally, in our clip of the week, Bill Maher, had to give it to him this week again too. Bill Maher may not be a clinician, but he seems to diagnose the president very accurately. Take a listen.
And finally, new rule, guns don't kill people, crazy people kill people. Last week, in response to the Virginia Tech shootings, President Bush said, when people see somebody who is exhibiting abnormal behavior, you do something about it. Thanks for the heads up, McGraw. But if that's the case, then I want to warn the country about a man I saw last night on TV. He's 6 feet tall, Caucasian, and he goes by the title President of the United States. I'm not kidding. George Bush is the crazy person we need to keep an eye on. He needs to stop taking money from the pharmaceutical lobby and start accepting samples. Only a delusional person could watch Alberto Gonzales before Congress last week do everything but say no hablo anglais and rip up a picture of the Pope and conclude that it increased his confidence in the man. That's called disassociation from reality. There's an old, frequently used definition of insanity, which is performing the same action over and over, expecting different results. And then it says, see the surge. Now, I'm no doctor, but I am on TV. And in my professional opinion, George Bush is a paranoid schizophrenic. He thinks the terrorists hate us for our freedom and believes they're going to follow us home. That's why he keeps obsessively clearing brush, so Osama can't use it for cover. Other symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia are, do you see things that aren't there, such as a link between 9/11 and Iraq? Do you feel things that you shouldn't be feeling, like a sense of accomplishment? Do you have trouble organizing words into a coherent sentence? Do you hear voices that aren't really there? Like, oh, I don't know, your imaginary friend Jesus. Telling you to start a war in the Middle East. Well, guess what? There are a large number of people out there also suffering from the same delusions, because there are Republicans, there are conservatives, and then there are the Bushies. This is the 29% of Americans who still think he's doing a heck of a job, Whitey. And I don't believe it's coincidence that almost the same number of Americans, 25%, told a recent pollster that they believed that this year, 2007, would bring the second coming of Christ. I have a hunch these are the same people. Because if you think that you're going to meet Jesus before they cancel Ugly Betty, then you're used to doing things by faith. And if you have so much blind faith that you think this war is winnable, you're nuts and you shouldn't be allowed near a voting booth. There's only one job you can be trusted with, and that's picking out Phil Spector's next hairdo.
And that is your news and commentary for this another week of Blue Mondays. We definitely want to remind you Blue Mondays is on each and every Monday night here on AOC Channel 15 here in the greater Acadiana area. I want to give a special shout out to my friends out in Crowley who are watching the show. We're definitely glad that you are now able to access us here on AOC. We've got a great program and we've got a great bunch of folks out in Crowley watching us. So a special shout out to our friends out there. And with that, we'll be right back.
Oh, no. They say he's got to go, 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 Gonzales. His nose looks like Pinocchio, Alberto Gonzales.
Because of Iraq.
Because of Iraq, Osama bin Laden is still a threat.
Because of Iraq, our military is spread too thin.
Because of Iraq, there are more terrorists in the world.
Because of Iraq, America is less secure. So if you see commercials telling you to be afraid of terrorism, remember, it's because of Iraq.
President Bush isn't listening to us.
It's time to end the war.
Congress passed a plan to end it.
And bring our troops home.
But the president vetoed it.
We want Congress to know
we are with you.
Don't back down to President Bush.
Send him the same bill again and again.
We, the people, will stand with you.
Because stopping a president who believes he can do no wrong
takes people with courage to do what's right.
I'm John Edwards, and I approve this message.
This week in history. In 1847, in Philadelphia, the American Medical Association, AMA, is founded. In 1886, pharmacist Dr. John Scythe Pemberton invents a carbonated beverage that would later be named Coca-Cola. In 1933, censorship in Germany. The Nazis staged massive public book burnings. In 1939, the first commercial FM radio station in the United States is launched in Bloomfield, Connecticut. The station later becomes WDRC-FM. 1945, World War II, VE Day. German forces agreed to an unconditional surrender. In 1954, Bill Haley and the Comets released Rock Around the Clock, the first rock and roll record to reach #1 on the charts. In 1958, Velcro's trademark is registered. In 1960, U.S. Food and Drug Administration approves the sale of the birth control pill. In 1970, the Beatles song The Long and Winded Road is released as a single in the United States. It becomes the group's last #1 single in that country. In 1974, Watergate scandal. The United States House of Representatives Judiciary Committee opens formal and public impeachment hearings against President Richard M. Nixon. In 1982, during a procession outside the Shrine of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Portugal, security guards overpower Juan Fernandez Crone before he can attack Pope John Paul II with a bayonet. Crone, an ultra-conservative Spanish priest opposed to the Vatican II reforms, decided that the Pope must be killed for being an agent of Moscow. In 1987, the first heart-lung transplant takes place in Baltimore, Maryland. The surgery is performed by Dr. Bruce Reitz of Stanford University School of Medicine. In 1992, Michigan ratifies a 203-year-old proposed amendment to the United States Constitution, making the 27th Amendment law. This amendment bars the U.S. Congress from giving itself a midterm pay raise. In 1994, Nelson Mandela becomes the first black president of South Africa. Celebrating birthdays this week: Mike Wallace, Beatrice Arthur, Don Rickles, Louis Farrakhan, George Carlin, Harvey Keitel, John Ashcroft, Armistead Maupin, Candice Bergen, Billy Joel, Stevie Wonder, Tim Russer, Alan Ball, Ving Rhames, Bono, Emilio Estevez, Vanessa Williams, Melissa Gilbert, Stephen Colbert, Darren Hayes, Enrique Iglesias, Jason Biggs, Rosario Dawson. This has been a look back at history for the week of May 7th through May 13th. This Week in History is brought to you by Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is on each and every Monday night at 9 p.m. on AOC Channel 15. Blue Mondays, your weekly progressive voice in Acadiana.